Okay. Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's lecture. Why do you want to see me on the video? It's not like you can see me anyway. There, you happy now? Okay, the video has started recording. For those joining us, we were discussing maths before the video started. Which combination is better from the three options? I would say linear and discrete mathematics would be your best combination for your IT career. If you're very good in calculus, do calculus. It just depends on where you see yourself. Calculus 2A is more about sequences. Calculus 2B is just advanced versions of integration and that. But linear and discrete have more application IT than the other one, than calculus. So it's up to you on that one. But let's today's lecture we're not over and done with, but let's get it started. We're going to be doing inheritance, but focusing on constructors and interfaces. You don't need to do an interface for Practical 6, but we are discussing it nonetheless. Okay, there's no interfaces in Practical 6. Okay, so as always with the lectures, when we start a new lecture, it's that you know, and who knows about what happened recently in South Africa especially. Let me be running away from you when you saw me in that department. Okay. What do I mean by no interface? There's no interface needed for Practical 6. Okay, but let's get onto the general knowledge. Yeah. Information was leaked at the Bureau. How was it leaked, though? Special occasion. Okay. What? I'm getting pestered by you to actually show my face. No, it wasn't hacked. It was not hacked. Not inside job either. How was 2.24 million South African details not a Trojan? The answer's on the slide. Take a hint from the slide, ladies and gentlemen. Social engineering. No, social engineering is fraud. Legend, have you ever? Who knows what social engineering is? Let me ask you that. What's the price? What the hell? The basics. No. Social engineering. Not manipulating private information. Got nothing to do with private information. What is the weakest link in any security system? Okay, we've got the right answer for what social engineering is. The human interface. There we go. The weakest link in any system is the human. In any security system is generally the human. Social engineering takes that it makes use of that advantage. So have you been phoned by a bank and they've asked you, please, can you verify who you are? Give us your ID number. Yes, no? Question is, ladies and gentlemen, if the bank phones you and asks for your ID number, how do you know it's the bank? Use Truecaller, Google number. No. They use email. Okay, social engineering relies on the fact that I could phone you and pretend to be someone else, or I could walk into an office and pretend to be someone else and use that to my advantage. Okay, and social engineering is the easiest way to get into systems. So what we've got here is the example of what currently happened a couple of days ago with the 24 million accounts being exposed to the credit bureau, which is fantastic. So most of our information is stolen again. There's a website called Have I Been Pwned? Here you actually can check if you're what information is being leaked about you, and of course, the social engineering. Okay, social engineering is about the ability to use people's information against them. Someone phoning you, asking you for your ID number, or asking you for your credit card number, or emailing you for asking for a credit card number, or emailing you and asking for details. That's social engineering, where they use information they've learned about you on Facebook, on any platform, and use it against you. Okay, and unfortunately, people are very susceptible. Yeah, that's the right word. Are easily fooled by social engineering, as it is a very easy system to use to actually get your advantage over personal information. So be very careful when people phone you and try to verify who you are. You should be verifying who they are first. But it's something to be keep in mind, as the 24 million accounts weren't taken through hacking. They weren't taken through inside jobs. It was taken through social engineering. They basically you did a bit of fraud and attempted their way got access to all the credit bureau's information. But it was a combination of social engineering and fraud that got them in and got them all the information they needed. Okay, it's very easy to phone someone and ask them for the information while pretending to be someone else, especially if you know enough about the person. So be very careful of that. It is the easiest and the first things people are used in terms of a hacking or a way of stealing your information. Okay, it is something we teach you later on to avoid. Okay, Mr. van der Westhuizen's commented they were handled. They were handled the information claiming to be a client. I'm not too sure what you're trying to go with that, but we'll come back to this. Everyone okay with the idea of what social engineering is? And this is not phishing. This is not vissing. It's not where they send you an email with a link. Like what happened with Twitter Bitcoin scam. I have to look into the Bitcoin scam. But social engineering makes use of your Twitter profile and that to actually get information out of you. Okay, it's where you interact with a person directly to get access to information you shouldn't have access to. Okay, so purpose and outcomes. Construct an inheritance. When Mr. van der Westhuizen was doing his tutorial last night, he came across a topic, or did a topic that I haven't covered with you guys, so I need to cover that in class as well. So we're going to look at if we create a constructor in a base class, how it affects the derived classes. Then we're going to look at interface, and I shouldn't say interface classes, it's an interface. Okay, this is not a GUI, a graphics user interface. It's known as an interface. Some of you have seen it when you've made classes. It's a different type of a way of doing inheritance. It's a mechanism for inheritance, but it's not inheritance as you understand it to this point, if that kind of makes sense. Okay, so recapping, again, we're using the UJ modules as an example, as it's something that everyone here is used to, and it's kind of makes sense to calculate semester marks, etc. So we have that situation with a must class UJ module, must inherit, so it's abstract. We don't know how to calculate the semester mark. So we got a situation here where we have an abstract class. Now, is it abstract because it has an abstract method, or is it abstract because we could declare it as abstract? Again, I'll repeat the question. I'm not going to do Dora the Explorer and answer questions. Correct. It's abstract because it has an abstract method. Okay, it's abstract because it has an abstract method. So because of the method, it makes the class abstract. Okay, remember, a class can be abstract without having abstract methods, but as soon as you have an abstract method, you have to have an abstract class. So you have to have a must inherit class. So the method will force it to be abstract. Okay, so that's what we have now. Now let's look at example if I go and introduce a constructor. What if I have a constructor in my base class? How does it affect the child classes? Especially with inheritance. I'm not talking about composition, I'm talking about inheritance. So how does this affect a child class? Does a child class have to have a constructor now? Yes or no? Yes, 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 yes. Okay. Yeah, most of you guys are on the right track. The fact that the parent class has a constructor means a child class has to have a constructor. So we actually have a constructor that looks like this, where we say we invoke the base class constructor because we actually need to. I'm going to do this in code with you guys now before I go into interfaces, because that's what we're going into next. So I need to explain why this is occurring. Okay, and it's important to understand that we have to do this. Let's open up VB. Now, with the constructor in the parent class, it basically forces the system into a certain approach, and we need to then complete that approach. So the second we have a constructor in our base class, it forces us to have a constructor in the child class, regardless of how we implement it, but we have to go and have a base class. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to point out something. When you're creating your class, make sure you right click on the project, name of the project, add. Okay, not on my project. My project will cause a problem. The module. Infer. Yeah, so now this, let's just have a look at this while we're here. Must inherit. I can create the class must inherit by default, okay? I can make it abstract without having abstract methods. This means that I can't create objects of this class, okay? Keep that in mind. But, this is what you guys need to understand. The second I have a must override function calculate semester mark as double. Second I have a must override, the class then becomes must inherit. Okay? It's not the other way around. The fact that I have a must inherit doesn't mean I have to have a must override. But if I have must override, I have to have abstract. So I have to go and must inherit. Just keep that in mind while you are working through this stuff. Okay. Public sub new. To and we go semester test 1 equals semester test 1, semester test 2. Okay, we'll get to that as well. Can you explain how methods defined in the base class? Could you please explain how to use methods defined? Okay, we'll do that. 2 mark. Okay, so there's my constructor. Can you inherit classes that have already been inherited by another class? Yes. So you can have multiple tier inheritance. So you can have your base class, a derived class, and then another class below that. That's completely plausible. Okay, so let's go make a informatics module. One B, 1A. You'll need property methods. I'm just skipping certain things because I want to focus on like the constructors and that. I'll show you how to call the methods still, but I just want to show you guys certain things with inheritance. Can we have a child class without attributes? Actually, yes, you can. Now, notice, okay, it's throwing a non-implemented exception. That's just saying the code isn't implemented, you need to do it. So I'm just going to say return 0 for now. But notice that it's still complaining. The code is still complaining. And the error it gives is informatics 1A must declare a sub new because the base class UJ module does not have accessibility to sub new with no arguments. So the fact that I went and created a constructor with parameters, okay, if I didn't have parameters, okay, it's not going to have an issue. It's happy. But the fact that I have parameters now means my base class needs to then handle said situation. So it needs to actually go and say public sub new and needs to either accept two parameters or handle the base classes. So even if I do this, you'll notice semester test 1. Let's just go semester test 1 as integer, semester test 2 as integer. You still see it's still not happy. We've got the constructor, it's still not happy. Okay? Because I haven't invoked the my base. I haven't called the parents constructor. As soon as you have constructors inside inheritance, you have to call the parents constructor to actually get the constructors to complete all the work. Because you don't know what the parent class has done. So we go mybase.new and we pass the semester test 1 and semester test 2. And now it's happy. Because now we can complete the constructor for the parent class. Okay? With the constructors of child classes and parent classes. As soon as the parent class has a constructor per se, you need to actually call the parent's constructor because it might be building part of the class that you don't know about. Okay, you're not always going to be the person that's building the entire program. So you might be the person working on a derived class, or you might be the person working on a second or third level derived class. So you need to comply with whatever the people have done ahead of you. So if they've got a constructor in their base class, that means, and you don't know what it's doing, that means you need to at least invoke it or call it. So we need to extend the functionality of the base class and invoke my base to actually get the constructor called, to get it finished, and get the base part of the base part of the class or object built. Okay, I just want to go through the questions I left out. Can you inherit? Okay, yes. Do you need property methods for the base class? Yes, we do. Can you have a child class without attributes? Technically, yes, you can because you get the attributes from the parent. So when creating an abstract class with a constructor, wouldn't it not be a good idea as the child class additional attributes are not included, or does the constructor need to be by default? Okay, I'm not sure what you mean by that. But if I have additional attributes here I had private, I would have practicals. then I could probably say num practicals as integer, and then you could also do this and say redum practicals to num practicals. Okay, so we can go and use the parent functionality and actually expand on it. Hopefully that makes sense with the parents, the construct in terms of inheritance. Some of these things are only going to make sense once you start using them yourself or implementing them yourself, because programming is a skill learned by trial and error more than anything else. So with a inheritance situation, as soon as you have a parent with a constructor, that means your child class has to invoke that parent constructor to make sure that it correctly instantiates the object. Because you have no idea what the parent's constructor is doing, you don't want to mess with it. You want to break the parent class or the parent part of the object. Because remember, your object is now like UJ, the informatics 1A is a UJ module. That means it's part of the parent class. Whatever the parent class has, the child class inherits it. You added a parameter, please check that the parent class is not complaining. The parent class won't have any issues with the extra parameter. The parent class doesn't care. Remember, the parent class doesn't know who's inherited from it. Okay? The parent class won't know which classes are inheriting from it. Only the child class will know who that it's inheriting. Please clarify this one for me. The base class contains all the attributes and methods that are common in all the classes, correct? So the base class, anything that is in common will be in the base class. Any methods, any functions that are in common will be in the base class. And then we expand from there. Okay, so someone asked about calling a method in the base class. So say we have a protected function, validate int the int value as integer, and we go and say that if value int value is less than 0, then return 0, else return int value. Okay? So anytime you want to use a common method of the base class, you call it once. I'm not sure about that. I come back to that question. So we don't need to repeat the common attributes that are in the base class and the child class, no. Like I'm not going declaring, okay, let me just put the property method in here. One mark as integer, get return st1, st1 equals value. Oh, here I'll actually go int value, wait, valid int value. Okay, and my property methods. Now I'd use the property methods in my base class. So I wouldn't go and redeclare semester test 1 inside my base classes, no. Because I already have semester test 1 in my base class. It'll be in my child class by default. Anytime if you want to use a common method, you call it base class or just call it once. No, if you want to use a common method, you just call it. Okay, so you just simply call it as is. So say I have here practicals. Let's just do the property method for practicals. Public property Practicals, key as integer, what is it? Okay, I'll do that in now. We return practicals key. Now, the validate method was in the parent class. So I don't need to do anything special. I just need to call it. Valid int value. Okay, hopefully that answers the question from earlier about how to call methods from your base class. Okay. Now, when it comes to your form, you guys are overthinking this a lot. Here you would just say private IF informatics 1 module as informatics 1A and use it as is. You always call methods from the base class like that, or okay, I'll explain why I use the validate. Well, that's how you'd call. The only time you can call a method from the base class is if it's protected or public, firstly. What's the validate int for? That's just to make sure it's a non-negative number. So in my base class, I have a protected function validate int, checks if it's negative or not. If it's negative, it gives me a 0. If it's not, it gives me the value. And in the class, when I enter a mark for a practical, the mark can't be negative. So if I try and enter negative, automatically returns a 0. That's for validation, yeah. That's an approach of validation. There are other ways to validate. I see some of you guys have come up with very interesting ways to validate your code, which is actually good. We're still going to teach you another way later on. But how you call, wait, okay. Should there be an instance of the parent class in every, no, there's no instance of the parent class. The only time the parent class exists, you say, is inherits. Should there be an instance of the parent class for every instance of the child class? No. You only create the child class that you need. I don't need to go and create the parent class because I can't make it. Remember, I can't do this. Remember, the parent class in this case is abstract. I can't go and create it. Okay, the parent class is abstract, so I cannot create the parent class. So if I don't make the function protected, what would the function work? Unless it's, I think it's protected, so I'm allowing my child class, my derived classes to see it. If I made it public, I wouldn't really want to make it public because then everyone can use it. So I'm using protected in this approach. If it's a public method or public subroutine, then anyone can invoke it, even the child class or derived classes can invoke it. But again, remember the UJ module is abstract. That means I can't create an object of that type. So abstract have two things. We can't create objects. We cannot instantiate objects of type of an abstract class. Does that make sense? Okay. Everyone keeping up so far? Since we can't instantiate, what do we use it? What do we use it? The thing is, an abstract class provides us abstract classes provide a framework for us to build on when we don't know what the exact details are. So in the case of the UJ module, we know that every subject has to calculate a semester mark, but do you know how they calculate a semester mark? Do we have the exact details on how every single subject calculate? No. Okay, so therefore we know we have to do it, so we say they have to do it by saying it's must override, which then forces the child class to finish off the work and tell you how to calculate the semester mark. So by doing this, we force the functionality to be completed by the child class. That's why we have the must override. Inheritance, the purpose of inheritance is to inherit qualities that are common. So instead of having to say, let's go back to the question. If I didn't have, let's go back here. If I didn't have the base class, that means in every single class, I would have to create semester test 1, semester test 2 exams and these functions and repeat it in all 3. So think about if I had to make all the modules that exist in UJ. That's a couple thousand different modules. So for every single module, I'm going to go and create these 3 variables because I don't want to use inheritance. Inheritance allows us to say, okay, I've got a new module. It builds on an existing module and allows us to expand. So inheritance allows us for code reuse and expanding. If that makes sense. Can you just re-explain what you've just said? I'm not sure what I just said. So in terms of when you asked the question, what was I specifically, what was I talking about? Is it possible to have 2 parents not in VB? No. VB doesn't allow for multiple base classes. Okay, but they do provide an alternative for it, which we might not get to today. I might discuss the idea and then cover it tomorrow, based on our time. Okay. Can there be an array in the parent? Yes, there can be an array in the parent. There's nothing stopping the parent class from having an array. Calculations are done in the child class, not all of them. Some calculations are done in the base class. So in the case of calculating a final mark, calculating a final mark will be done in the parent class in the situation. The must inherit keyword makes it abstract. Okay, so that is what makes it abstract. That indicates the class is abstract. Okay, let me just finish off the one method so you guys can see that the base class can do functionality. Function calculate final mark as double the method for that variable exam mark as integer return calculate semester mark times 0.50 plus exam mark times 0.50. And that means I can do calculations. Even though it doesn't have the method must override, it's still abstract. If I go and declare a class as must inherit, regardless of what's inside it, it becomes abstract, yes. Okay, so there I've got functionality in my base class. My base class can do functionality. It just, if I don't know how to do it, I have to leave it to the child class. So in the form, I would call informatics 1A module equals new informatics 1A, and it's expecting to have a semester mark, 2 mark, and a number of practicals, so 10. Ladies and gentlemen, one thing I don't want to see, I saw that last week on it, is this. I do not want to see you guys doing this. Okay, you don't put input boxes inside a constructor like that. That's just horrible coding. It makes it very, very difficult to read. So this we don't want to see ever. Okay, it's a bad and it's a lazy way to do it. So for this constructor, you would need a dumb semester test 1 as a integer equals a cint input box. Remember, code must be readable, not just functioning. Code must be readable. Please enter semester test 1%. And that would be ST1. Okay, then I could then call informatics module and say calculate FM or calculate SM or okay, once you've got it here, just a normal class or normal object. So I'd probably have a txt display dot text equals that, and then I have a txt final mark dot text equals that. Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Do we have to do that? So we have to do that for all the child classes, e.g. you have to construct the objects. Remember, once the aspect of child class and parent class kind of disappears, it's an object. Okay, so here we're just working with the object informatics module. There's no real issue of is it inherited or not. Here it's just we're working with a object. Okay. In this case, the object is a informatics 1A object, and it's an informatics 1A class, and it's technically a UJ module. So here we aren't too concerned of the inheritance. It's an object. When we're coding it here, we're very wary of the inheritance aspect. Okay, so I think you guys are overthinking when it gets to the form. No, the inheritance changes. It's still a module. It's still an object. Okay, so don't stress too much about that part. Okay, is everyone okay with the idea of abstract, the must override, the must inherit? Overridable, overrides, etc. Okay. What I'm going to do is there's 5 minutes left, so I'm going to introduce the idea of an interface, and then tomorrow I'm going to finish off interfaces. Okay? Because there's no way I'm going to finish off interfaces. Okay? So I'm just going to breeze through this, I'll come back. Okay. If we compare stages of development, okay, so here we got 3 stages of objects. We have an abstract class where it has some functionality and then some things to be completed. An interface class is a complete breakdown on there is nothing there except a list of things we have to do. So interfaces are more about a list of things we need to complete in a class to make it a certain type. So interfaces are saying it must have certain functionality, but not giving any framework on how their functionality must be done. It just says it must have this functionality. And then we have our concrete or complete classes where it has all the functionality built into the class. We are able to create an object of a concrete class, okay, or a complete class. We're able to create objects of these types of classes. The abstract class, we have some of it, but not all of it. Interface, we have absolutely none of it. What I mean by that is this. Interface classes has no code. This is an interface, what you're looking at right now on screen. Interface, iPromotable, some variable, check promotion. There is no functionality, there is no variables. There's a property method saying you need a variable, yes, but nothing else. Okay, interfaces provide a list of things we have to do in a certain class to make it of a certain type. Okay, I see a question. So inheriting, would we have to create property methods of the inherited methods and attributes from the parent class? No. You would create them in the property methods will be created in the corresponding class. So if your base class has a property attribute, you create the property method there. You wouldn't make the child class make the property method because it doesn't have access to the instance variable. Interfaces, however, they don't even have variables. You create an interface class just like you create any other class. I'll show you how to make interfaces tomorrow. Don't stress too much about how to make them. Just keep on the idea. If we look at these three, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, wait, there's 5 vending machines. Okay. Do they all have the same way of paying? Let's just consider this for a second. They have different variations on display because if you look at the method for paying, you put in money, you punch in a number, you put in money, you punch in a number. What if we wanted to change it to something like that? Would we have to scrap the machines and start again? Or just add on a component? Add on. Okay, so that's where interface comes in. Interface allows us to add on extra functionality to a class. So these are all different classes. We add an interface, we add on extra functionality without messing with the original too much. Okay, interfaces can be used to connect things that don't have common qualities as well. So in the middle here we have a coffee machine. It'll make you coffee. Next to it we have a what is it? Drinks dispenser. There is no food, there is nothing else besides drinks. But if we have an interface class below, they have a common method of paying at least. So we create commonality or a common quality between two things that don't normally share anything in common. Okay, we'll expand on interfaces tomorrow as well. But it's just the interfaces are the last part of inheritance at least. Yeah, there's a minute left to class. And again, I try to keep the recordings just to the time frame so we don't have them too large for downloading. Any last minute questions that anyone wants to ask while the lecture is still running? Okay, interfaces provide a connection between things that don't normally connect. That's the biggest thing. But we'll come to how to use interfaces and how to implement interfaces tomorrow in class. So your semester test for next week will cover everything up until including today's lecture and tomorrow's lecture. So whatever we finish tomorrow, which will be interfaces, that is what your semester test will be on for next week. Okay, so everything up until lecture 11 and up to practical 6 is included for your semester test. Okay, so will we also be doing upcasting and downcasting further in the module? Yes, you will be doing. That's part of polymorphism, or it's an aspect that helps with polymorphism. That'll be covered not starting next week. We'll probably start that the following week with Mr. Van der Westhuizen giving the lectures then. Upcasting, downcasting is included. It's just we're going to get there. Because that is ways of allowing for us to use polymorphism as well. It isn't polymorphism, it's an aspect that is involved. What is the difference between an interface and what we've been doing this far? Interfaces are extremely abstract. They have no functionality. Okay, So they provide a mechanism that allows us to connect classes, and also we're allowed to implement multiple interfaces. So this is a variation on allowing us to have multiple base classes. Okay, but again, I'll expand further on interfaces tomorrow when we can spend the entire 45 minutes on just interfaces. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now.